Happy New Year, homies. I'm recording this on the second day of 2023, but this video is timeless. We are talking about your personal new year, aka solar returns today. In this video, I'll explain what solar returns are, how they work, and how they are helpful to us. As astrology grows in popularity, I often hear people say, Happy solar return when it's their birthday. And a lot of people say it, but they don't actually know what it means in practice. So I'm going to explain that for you now. Okay. So we've already talked about birth charts on this channel. But just to recap, it's a graphical representation of where all the stuff was in the sky at the time of your birth, in the place of your birth. Now, solar returns really focus on the position of the sun from your birth chart. So whenever the sun returns back to that point that it was at in the sky in your birth chart, that is a solar return. Okay, we get back to this point. So if you were born with the sun at 3 degrees of Pisces, then when the sun returns back to 3 degrees of Pisces a year later, that is a solar return. Okay, I'll note here that sometimes your solar return is not the same day as your birthday. So it could come the day after, the day of, or the day before your birthday. It all depends on the degree of the sun and the zodiac sign that it's in. So that's why sometimes zodiac sign seasons can change from one year to the next. It's all about the degree. So sometimes Scorpio season could start October 21st. Other times it could start on a different day. That's like around that time frame. You can create a chart for the time of your solar return. This is an example of what's known as a subsidiary chart, where you're deriving a new chart from your birth chart, which is essentially the baseline or the root chart. So you can think of it like this. Your life is like a book, but not just one book. It's a huge series with many volumes. So your solar return is like a single volume from that series of books, of the books of your life, right? And by analyzing that solar return chart, we can see what's going to happen in that volume and predict what the shape of the year is going to look like for you. Now, we'll know what themes will be highlighted for you in the year ahead, and we'll get an idea of what concrete events will take place as well. And thanks to just a little bit of math and astronomy, we're able to calculate a solar return chart for any year of your life. So you can look far ahead into the future or you can look back into the past. It goes both ways. One important thing to note about solar returns is that the events of the solar return chart begin to play out about 2 to 3 months before the solar return actually happens. So if your birthday is December 5th. Your solar return will happen sometime between December 4th and December 6th, but you'll start to see solar return events unfold around the late September, October-ish time frame. And for me, at least in my experience, what I've seen is that solar returns really come in with a bang and they go out with a bang. So there's usually some major event that happens. So in my own life, my solar returns happen in October because that's when my birthday is, but the events start to unfold around August. So one year I met a guy who I ended up dating for a couple of years in August. Another year I started a brand new job. Another year I started graduate school. A different year I had to move unexpectedly, which triggered a lot of other things. So that's how it tends to play out. Really, like the action starts and shifts around the solar return beginning. Now, if you really want an accurate solar return reading, it's so critical, like just vital, that you juxtapose the solar return chart against the birth chart. So some astrologers will just look at your solar return chart without having looked at your birth chart at all. And that to me is like jumping into reading that volume without having any context for what you're reading. So you don't know the title of the volumes, you don't know the author, you don't know the genre, you're just in it. And that's not ideal because you really need that context from the birth chart to have an accurate reading. So you need to know something about the life of the person whose chart you're reading before you can tell them how the year is going to go in a truly accurate way. You need to understand how that solar return chart is going to show up for them, because different people would deal with the same set of circumstances very differently depending on who they are. So make sure someone sees your birth chart before they just jump into the solar return. That's all I'm going to say. At Homegirl Astrology, I will not read your solar return chart without reading the birth chart first. That's just how the business works. But it's for your own good. Now, let's say your birth chart says you're going to be incredibly wealthy, right? Like Rihanna, Oprah, rich, right? But your solar return chart says the financial promise for this year is just awful, right? If somebody had read that solar return chart without reading the birth chart, they wouldn't have that context and they wouldn't understand that, yeah, the money might be lower than usual this year, but it doesn't outweigh the greater life story of you being someone who's born to be very rich. And when you overlay the solar return chart on the birth chart, you're able to see which parts of your birth chart, which parts of your natal promise are going to come to fruition this year. So we talked about the solar return being a volume in the book series of your life. And now we'll talk about a lunar return. A lunar return is basically the same concept, or it's similar. Lunar returns show us when the moon returns to its natal position. So while a solar return happens about every 365 days, a lunar return, or the return of the moon, is going to happen every 28 to 29 days or so, along with the moon cycle. So that happens about once a month. That means when we create a lunar return chart, we're seeing a chapter in one of those volumes in the book of your life. So to reiterate, a lunar return is a subset of a solar return, which is a subset of your birth chart. Apologies for the background noise. I'm in New York this week. All right. And for me, I track my own lunar returns pretty closely just because I want to know what to expect. And this allows me to see how the not only how my month is going to play out, but it allows me to get a better understanding of the solar return as well. So when are these solar return moments going to play out over the course of the year? Like which months will be more action packed than others? So for me, this year, in my solar return, it is a Cancer rising year for me, right? So when I look at the months and look at the lunar returns for the year and I see which lunar returns have a Cancer rising month, I can say like, oh, this is probably where that solar return story is really going to come through in these specific months. It's very cool. And looking at my lunar returns for me, at least, gives me something to get excited about each month, because for me, the energy is shifting each month and I can see what's going to happen. And yeah, at the end of the day, I'm still playing out the greater story of my birth chart, but I can really see it in a more tangible way more quickly with the lunar return. So it's super cool. I love lunar returns. I'm a big fan. As I said, I track them very closely because I want to know what's good. I want to know what's up. And solar returns, I track those for the same reason. So if you are interested in knowing what's up for you this year with your solar return, hit me up at homegirlastrology.com, book a reading. I'm here. Again, start with the birth chart so I can know who you are before jumping into the solar return. That's why we do it that way. Feel free to like this video, share, subscribe, and follow us on the gram and Facebook as well. Have a great day, y'all. Have a great year, homies. Let's get it, okay? Peace.